welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. Today we're on episode 37, Leading with Love, the secret to stronger teams and lasting impact. Today I am riding solo. It's just me in this special episode. What makes it special is that it is being released on Valentine's Day. So I decided today I was going to go along with that theme of love because love is not something we typically talk about in the workplace. Well, I was introduced to a book years and years ago, and it became a favorite very quickly for me. And I immediately thought when I was trying to figure out what to do for a Valentine's Day episode, it had to do with love. And it was the book Love Works by Joel Manby. And it is such a great book that kind of opens your eyes to the fact that typically we think of love as an emotion, right? We think of romantic love. And the emotions associated. So that's why we don't talk about love in the workplace for the most part. But today, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the action of love and how that really does play an important role in effective leadership and having a long-term impact on the success of an organization. So that's what we're digging into today is honestly, I have the book here if you're watching the video version. This text, what I did was, of course, at this point, I've read it several times, and then over the past few days, I've read it again. I've done the Audible again. I pulled out the key principles from Love Works, and they have 7 principles for effective leaders to incorporate love. And I'm sharing those with you today. And I want to share why each of these components are so important, what it looks like to actually implement them, because that's the important part is as you're listening, I want you to feel like you can take what I'm sharing and turn right around and make a change if you choose to do so, and give you some examples that might be relatable to you. The thing that I found most interesting, you know how like each time you read something, you might get a different thing out of it. I mentioned that I've read this several times. Well, when I was listening to it, the most recent time, I never realized that the 7 principles themselves actually came out of the Bible. So it talks about how in 1 Corinthians, we know love is patient, love is kind, all of that, which you might typically hear at a wedding, right? That is what this book was also based off of. So these 7 principles connect back to those ideas. So that was kind of taking it to the next level. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on that before, but I picked up on it this time. So just a little interesting fact for you. That's where these come from. Sometimes when I read something, everything is a certain number of things, right? Like 5 principles here, 3 principles there. This acronym means this means that. It's a lot to remember. And so sometimes when I look at something that has a number in it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like here, 7 more things that I won't be able to remember. But connecting it back to something I already know, now I will probably retain the information a little bit better. So that's what I want to dig into today. Hopefully you'll stick along with me for it. Love and leadership do truly go hand in hand. You typically hear people talk about servant leadership. Probably Jay and I have talked about servant leadership. I consider him to be a servant leadership guru. It's definitely something that I know he and I have both taught for Laurel Ridge Community College. That's that concept of serving, not leadership for a sense of control, but the concept of serving others through your leadership and genuinely caring for the people around you. That's going to create loyalty, right? It's going to help you retain good people in your organization. It's going to make people want to be there and be more productive and support that mission, rally behind that cause. So obviously it makes sense And I know that I've also talked about building like a healthy culture. We've kind of talked around a lot of these topics about what a healthy culture should look like and how we should be treating other people. But I really do think that this is a little bit of a different approach than that. So even if you're like, okay, I've heard it before, I know what servant leadership is, or okay, yeah, I know what a healthy culture looks like, or I know I should treat people kindly, I get it. I do encourage you to still take a listen and see if you can gain something out of one of these 7 principles. All right, so let's start off with the very first one. The very first principle is patience, something that I always have to work on. So I know oftentimes we move very, very quickly through things. And when we move quickly, we don't always react the way that we would if we would pause and think about how we should properly handle a situation. So that's what immediately comes to mind when I think about, okay, the principle of patience, I just need to slow things down a little bit. But what I liked about the way that it was presented in the text is it's beyond just slowing down, but it's the self-control, having self-control in difficult situations. And so when we think of difficult situations, a lot of times those conversations that people might avoid having, when I'm doing coaching conversations with people, a lot of times it comes down to lacking performance, right? You don't want to have that conversation with a team member who is not living up to your expectations. That's a difficult conversation. So how does patience apply to that when it comes to performance? Am I supposed to be patient and just kind of continue to put up with it and hope that things change? That's what you might have initially thought when I said patience, but that's not what it means at all. I love the way that they said this in the text, so I'm actually going to quote it exactly. They said, being patient doesn't mean tolerating poor performance. That's not what it is. You're not tolerating it. Let me go back to it and make sure I say it correctly, because I know as soon as I go to do it, I'm going to say it wrong. Be patient with me. See? It's relevant. Don't be patient with poor performance. Be patient with how you respond to poor performance. Okay, so that is interesting to me because the delivery of the message that someone is underperforming, that's what's crucial here. That we can't see something and immediately call them out in a group of people, right? Really consider, how should I handle this appropriately so that they are aware that they're not meeting the expectations, and we can begin to work towards moving forward past this, but also not, shaming them. And I have seen it done before where someone gets called out in a group setting and I feel terrible because I know for me, I would completely shut down. I'd be so ashamed of myself, and it would be hard for me to even be in that environment wondering what other people think of me based on this thing, whether it's I made a mistake or whatever it is. So we really have to think about how we handle praise versus the difficult conversations. And I think I've mentioned it before that when we talk about the ratio, we really are supposed to give at least 3 pieces of praise to every 1 piece of feedback, which in the book they call it admonishment, which is interesting. I don't typically use that word. But they recommend that you praise in a public setting, which can go both ways. That goes back to knowing DISC and personalities. If I praise some personalities in a public setting, that would be just as traumatic as receiving criticism in a public setting because they don't like to be the center of attention. So you have to consider that, right? But the whole concept of praising publicly but having those difficult conversations in private and not in front of other people, that totally makes sense to me. But when you are praising, I know I've mentioned this before, you have to be specific. You have to tell them what you're praising them for. We can't just do like the empty praise of the great work, good job kind of thing. We have to be looking for the actual specifics that we can say. You did a really great job with this because I noticed this, right? Otherwise, it begins to be empty. And then you lose a little credibility as to like, oh, she's just trying to butter me up because she's just going to turn around and tell me something I'm not doing well, right? We don't want that to happen. So make sure that as a part of that, you are being specific. And then the criticism piece, or as they call it, admonishment, that has to happen in private. That has to happen one-on-one. And again, the importance here is being specific. So I have been working with a couple of clients recently, helping them use the GROW coaching model. I think that it is such a simple model for leaders to kind of adopt as general practice anytime they need to have a conversation with a team member. Starting with the goal. What is the goal here? Asking questions, not making statements. What's the overarching goal? What are you trying to achieve? What is the reality? Where are we right now? Okay, so if we know that this is the goal and this is the reality, we have to figure out some options to get there. What are some strategies we can come up with to help you get there? See how I'm coming along your side, but beside you, and helping you to identify strategies and get your buy-in. And then W is identifying a way forward. And that's when you get specific as to, okay, this is the one that we're going to implement and how we're going to make sure that, in this situation, this doesn't happen again. And this is when we're going to check in on it, etc. So that is just a very, very simple coaching model, but it would help with a conversation like this where you want to give someone the feedback one-on-one, and maybe it's a hard conversation for you to have. But the important thing is that you have to consider like their dignity. You have to respect them, right? It has to come out of a place of care and concern, not that you're reprimanding them. So that's the important piece there. So again, the principle we're talking about here is patience. So you need to be patient in the way that you approach these situations, not just trying to jump to the end, which is, I need you to do this. In the future, you just need to do this, right? Instead of jumping ahead, come alongside them and help them get there, but do so privately, is something that is recommended in here. So that is the concept of patience. I think that patience applies to many other areas other than giving feedback on performance, that's for sure. But we could do a whole episode on patience. But for today's episode, today's purposes, we'll stick to that. So that's principle number 1. The next one out of the text is kindness. So remember, love is patient, love is kind. So we know that. So kindness is all about creating a positive environment. And what I love that they said in the text was thinking about like how you would treat your mom. If you have a good relationship with your mom, you can't just make an assumption of that. But my mom, even though I'm going to get crap for this later, is and always has been my best friend, the one that has remained since the beginning of time, right? She has been that one consistent thing in my life. So anyway, treating someone like her, I treat her with kindness. Of course, I try to treat everyone with kindness, but I love that they say, think of, that person that you really care about, you really love, that you would not ever disrespect. Treat other people that way too, and consider that every interaction, you have the opportunity to make someone's day. Are you going to make someone's day better, or are you going to make someone's day worse? So actually, I have a confession. So this morning, I almost got in an accident on the way down 81. And there was a Sierra back in the day when someone did something that felt threatening to me, like threatened my safety in any capacity. I would have chased them down. So I would have literally, I did that plenty of times. But today I handled it differently with patience. But the kindness in here is I would have, when someone almost runs me off the road at 80 miles an hour, I would have been very mad, and I would have felt like I had to like get back at them in some way so that they know how much their behavior impacted me. But this morning I chose kindness because I thought, okay, this person, I could tell that they already felt terrible because I saw in the mirror, they said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I knew that I could choose to get up on them and chase them down, and that wasn't going to solve any problems and would only make us both feel worse. Or I just let off the gas, held back, pulled in behind someone else, and I let them go up the road, and I let them just like be okay with it and me be okay with it. And I thought, actually, that was an opportunity where I could have made her day so much worse. Even though it didn't end up as an accident, I could have like attempted to make her day worse because of her behavior, her action, but I chose not to. So I am tooting my own horn right now because I did handle that with kindness. But when we think about it in the workplace setting, something that's top of mind right now is a handwritten note showing kindness. I got here today. I was just bragging about this too. I love First Bank. I already have like 6 accounts with First Bank because it's just how I divide up my funds in profit first model. And I realized I needed another account recently, so I opened another account online. And I came to the office today and I had a handwritten thank you note from Taylor, who I always talk to on the phone when I call their line. Thanking me for opening an account online and letting me know if I ever need anything to give her a shout. That is like so kind that someone took time out of their day to do that, right? One of my goals right now that I've been working on is to write 1 handwritten thank you note per day, because I realize that I have a lot of people that I should be showing gratitude towards, and I was feeling a lot of guilt that I felt like I wasn't saying thank you enough. Saying it and like giving them a thoughtful note, 2 different things, especially when you know like someone's super busy, that they stopped and paused and did that. I think it's super powerful. So that's my goal right now. Doing pretty well with it, I have to admit. But really thinking about what can you do to celebrate wins with somebody, a small little gift. It could be praise again and kindness. It could be anything that you can do to show that you care. Sometimes kindness, I also think, is being such a good listener when someone is sharing something about their life. And you might have 8,000 other things going on in your mind right then, and you might not really want to listen that much, but to remember those things and be able to come back later and say, "Oh, I remember your dog was sick the last time we talked. How's your dog doing?" Or whatever it may be. To me, that's super kind and shows that you care. So those are just a few ideas, a few examples of what it could look like to show kindness in the workplace. So we've talked about patience, really with a focus on patience with poor performance, right? Being patient in how you respond to it. And now kindness, treating everyone like that person that you love so dearly. And you would, always want to be respectful and loving too. Okay, so the next one, number 3, trust. So putting confidence in someone, trusting someone. Of course, this is important. When I talk to a lot of my clients, they always say that they need to delegate more, right? They need to empower their people to take on more, that they might hold on to things, and maybe for different reasons. They might hold on to things because they don't necessarily fully trust that it will be done to, the level they want it to, or they might hold on to it because they feel like everybody else already has enough on their plate and they'd rather just take it on themselves so as not to overwhelm someone else. There's lots of reasons, but it's a very common thing that I hear of, I know I should be delegating, but I'm not doing it. But think about that when you actually delegate something to someone, that is a message that you trust them to do this to the level that you expect. I think that that's really cool. I think about when I had been giving up some of my tasks to Erica, I was able to do so and fully trust that she was going to handle it, sometimes probably even better than I would have handled it myself, honestly. But that had to have made her feel a little bit good, right? That Sierra is willing to give me all of these things. So consider that, placing trust and confidence in someone and letting them show you what they're capable of. Sometimes maybe even proving you wrong in some cases where you didn't think that someone would be capable of doing something or they'd have the skill set of doing it just yet, and you give it to them and they shock you. So that's really important. Another piece of trust has to do with the listening. I mentioned listening when it comes to kindness and being able to follow up on something that someone said later. But also listening carefully is a sign of trust. When you're interrupting someone, like, we're here, we're collaborating together, we're sharing ideas, and every time Erica goes to share an idea, I interrupt and I start saying what I think. Now, would Erica think that I trust her, that I trust that her ideas are of value, or would she feel distrust? Obviously, she would feel as if her ideas weren't that important, and I'm basically sending her that message. So really think through, are your actions showing people that you trust in them, that you believe that they can do these things, that you believe that they, bring new innovative ideas to the table? I was working with someone this week who just admittedly said, I know I'm not a creative person, so I really lean into the rest of my team to bring ideas to the table. And I think that's great. That shows that you trust them. You know where your strengths lie, and you lean into other people's strengths where you can. So an idea, a suggestion of how you might use this is, like, if you're collaborating on a project together, let the team take ownership of the project and decide based on the strengths around the table who's doing what, how to allocate tasks and resources. It shows that you trust. So those are just a few of the ideas here. The more you let others make decisions as well, not just delegating a task, but delegating decision making, also is going to help them to see that you trust in them. And again, this all goes back to love, that you love them, just not the emotion of love, right? You're showing love through kindness and patience, and now empowering them and knowing that they're going to give it their best. And guess what? If they don't meet expectations the first time, it goes back to, okay, the performance wasn't there. Are you approaching that conversation with patience, as we stated? So that's number 3. We've made it through 3 already. There are 7, so I'm going to keep cruising along for the sake of time. I don't want this episode to go too long. The next one is being unselfish. Well, it says, don't be, you know what it says, but unselfish, thinking less of yourself. Think of yourself less and other people more. So prioritizing the team's needs, prioritizing each individual and what their growth needs to look like, prioritizing the organization all over what your own personal gain could be. So I think that this one's really important for people to see, that when you come to the table, the things that you're offering up are not self-centered. It's not to aid in getting what you want, but it's considering what other people want, need, the organization, the community, and so on. I just did a strategic planning right before I came here to record this. And that was one of the big strengths that stood out for some of the board members, was their commitment to the betterment of the community, the betterment of the organization that I was working with. And it really stood out to all of the other board members that a couple of these members, you could tell that they weren't in it for themselves. One of them, how did he put it, said, there's no hidden agenda, which was, it threw everybody off at first. And he was like, no, literally, like, I'm transparent. There's never a hidden agenda. That I'm not here for something for myself. I'm here for the greater good. So you want to think of yourself less. Don't be selfish with time. Don't be selfish with talent, right? Give of yourself in appropriate amounts. And I say in appropriate amounts, not inappropriate amounts, because it can go too far. And it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, because I do try to give a lot and be of service whenever I can, but sometimes to my own detriment, sometimes to the detriment of, my family time, or the thing that I'm doing for a different organization, I'm not doing in my own business because I don't have any time left to do it. So you have to, find that balance. But in general, being loving in the workplace environment means that you're thinking of yourself less and giving more. And then helping others to be that way too, and helping, you're modeling it for others. Asking the right questions to help people to see things differently, in a way that can help people understand other perspectives in the room. All of those things are unselfish. This is a really interesting chapter. If you want to pick up this book, I did put it on my essentials. Well, I guess it's a good time to mention that. I don't remember. Did I mention that before, Matthew? Okay. Well, I'll just do it now. So I ended up creating a page online of my essentials. And by that, I mean that between the retreats and this podcast, and when I'm, working with coaching or out in an organization, I'm always making recommendations of, you should read this, you should get this Remarkable, you should get a full focus plan, or you should da-da-da-da-da. So I finally created an essentials page. Actually, I shouldn't say I created it. I have to give credit where credit is due. Justin of Information Experts created it for me. And there's a book list on there. There's all sorts of things, all the things that I believe to be essential. It's my first round, and I will continue to add to it over time. I'm going to try to not annoy him with it. We're going to end up with an entire store on there. But I say that because Love Works actually made the cut in the first round. It was one of the first things that I sent him to put up on the website. So if you're interested in the book, I do have the link directly on my website. I actually put Full Focus as a certified pro. I have, a relationship with them. I became an Amazon associate, so I put links directly on my page too. So anyway, the book list there is great, but this one's on there. So what I was saying about being unselfish is, if this book is of interest and you purchase it, there's a lot of stuff in the unselfish. It goes far beyond what I'm talking about today, but I know that time is limited. So check that part out. Okay. The next piece, being truthful. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? The importance of being truthful as a leader. Being able to be open and honest and transparent in your conversations, no matter who that you're talking to, even when those conversations are difficult to have. And again, this really comes up in a lot of my coaching sessions of someone's having a problem and they're trying to figure out whether they need to have the difficult conversation or if they just need to wait it out and see if it fixes itself on its own. Now, it's funny because I was going to say, now we all know that it's better to just handle things, because so many times, and I've done this before, some of us avoid any conflict or tension, so we wait and we wait and we wait and nothing changes, but we're going to give it a little more time and a little more time, when it's better to just address the reality of what you're seeing in front of you head on, but doing so by being truthful. So it's important because it builds trust with your team. So obviously, the more truthful you are, the more that they're going to trust you. It helps everyone to get in alignment. It helps people to feel like they have all the information that they need to make the most effective decisions for their business or for their life as a whole. The more information you have, the more well-informed you are to make a decision. So being truthful is so important, both in a professional environment and a personal environment. Sometimes we say, like, don't shoot the messenger, right? Sometimes the information you have to share is not something that people want to hear, but that's not that person's fault necessarily, right? They're the ones that are being sent to deliver this message. So make sure that if you're on the receiving end of truth, that you stop and think that sometimes that truth is truly coming out of love, and that's why. And I know that I've had many experiences with that too, where I have had to share with someone that I care about, I'm telling you this not to be mean, but because I do care about you and I want you to be successful, and I feel like this is a blind spot for you, and I want to make sure you know it's there. So on the receiving end, make sure you consider the intentions behind the truth as well. And then something else that I see is sometimes when a person is being let go from an organization, people don't want to have those conversations either. They don't want to say, like, you're being let go because you perform poorly, right? If you care about humans, you don't want to hurt them. You're taking away their source of income and it's impacting their family, and you already feel bad about it. So you're like, I don't want to lay it on and make it worse and tell them all the reasons why they didn't make it here. It should never be a surprise to someone that they're being let go. If you are letting someone go due to poor performance, that conversation should have been had many times before. It should have been documented. You should have had plenty of opportunities for them to grow and improve, and you to support them and give them the resources they needed to improve or move into a different role that better aligns with, their strengths and their needs. So make sure that that's not the first time they're hearing about it. If it is, it's a major problem. You haven't been truthful all along. When letting someone go, they should know the truth as to why they are being let go. And that's important too, because there have been times where someone has been let go. They weren't told their reason, but if they had been told, it could be something that they were working on to improve upon themselves before working at another organization, but it's almost like you're holding them back because you weren't honest with them about what you saw. So though it can be hard to deliver that message, think about, again, the love behind it and how you can deliver that honesty with compassion, right? And then on the receiving end, be open to hearing the truth. Be open to working on the things that someone shares with you, and understand that that's their perspective. Maybe you haven't seen it that way before. Ask other people for feedback. I know I asked for feedback recently on ways that I could improve. And I had to accept whatever, like I'm asking, I had to accept whatever came out of their mouths and know that, I asked for it and I could use it as an opportunity for growth. So being truthful is the next principle. So address those challenges when you have to right away. Be honest about them. Be honest and truthful about, challenges going on in an organization. Sometimes things are happening behind the scenes and people will see the effects of them but not understand why all these things are happening. So the more transparent you can be, the better, for sure. All right, the next one is being forgiving. It is so easy to hold a grudge sometimes. For example, that's a perfect example. It's a great segue. Maybe someone gave you feedback one time that hurt your feelings, and now you hold a grudge because they said this to you, right? Whatever the grudge is from. It doesn't necessarily matter as much what the person said or did to you. It's about how you respond to them. So when we're talking about forgiveness in terms of leadership, we're talking about letting go of the past and focusing on moving forward in a more positive direction. That's what we're talking about here is if someone has wronged you or your team or your organization, forgive them and figure out how you can repair and move in a positive direction. Goes back to the poor performance thing. In the text, they talk about the admonishment. In private, they say, handle it and never mention it again. Like, don't continue to hold it against them and bring up, remember that time when you did this? And, and now you're doing this and it's adding up. Once it's handled, being able to move on and put it in the past and focus on, a happier, healthier workplace, positive future. So it's not always going to work out when you give them a second chance that things are going to get better, right? I'm not saying that you forgive them and it doesn't get better and you forgive them again and it doesn't get better. I'm not saying that at all. But the idea of just considering, is this something that I really need to hold on to? Or is this something that we're better off to move forward and keep trying to build in a positive direction? So consider releasing, forgiving that person that has impacted you or your team or the business as a whole. Because think about when you hold a grudge, the ripple effect that it has. When someone says something poorly about someone, how that message can spread. And then people will judge that person based on what they've heard, not based on their own experiences with them. I think I mentioned it in a podcast episode before, but I'm not sure, that as a teacher, people would come and warn me of upcoming students, and it would make me so mad that they would try to frame this child in a negative light to me, and almost taint my view of them before I ever met them, right? Think about the ripple effect of that, am I going to now treat this child differently because they had a bad experience with that teacher? You never know what that situation was, if there was a personality conflict there, what was going on at home there, right? You never know. So let someone develop their own perspective of this person, rather than going and based on your experience sharing, avoid this person. I know I've had to really work on, holding back on information about how a person had behaved, because even as an adult, and not talking about with kids here, that I knew things had happened to me, but I didn't want to go out and share those things with other people, in fear that maybe that person had changed, or it was an isolated situation, or it was just an issue with me, and why am I going to drag their name through the dirt over that? So it's important to consider the impact that it has to hold a grudge and then share that with others. So obviously you can see why it's important. These are just a couple of the key things, but it can be simple. It doesn't even have to be a big deal. It could be, holding a grudge because this person missed a deadline in getting something to you, and now you're missing a deadline. So their behavior impacted you, you hold a grudge, right? Or they always show up late to the meeting, and so you guys never get through the agenda, and now I'm holding a grudge because their behavior impacted me, right? So it doesn't have to be something major. It can be something smaller, but over time it adds up and it's impacting you more significantly. Okay, the next one, the last principle number 7, is being dedicated. So you can show love by being dedicated. So sticking to your values and everything that you do, being that same person personally and professionally. I know I've driven it home plenty of times before that your values really should be one and the same, whether you're at work or at home. And hopefully you've landed in a, work environment that has shared values with you. But making sure that as a leader, you are aligning your actions with the values. No matter what's going on around you, your actions align with your values, and you are dedicated to living out the values of the organization. You are committed to the team. You are committed to respecting others, everything that we've talked about, right? All of the other components, that you're dedicated to those. Think about how much dedication can help build trust amongst people. If you see someone's commitment, despite what they're going through over here, that they're still committed to this mission and they're going to support however they can, it could even inspire others to get involved. So thinking about this piece, you want to be the values, right? Live out those values. You also want to consider how you're navigating difficult times, challenges. Are you leading with love in difficult times, or are people seeing a bad side of you? I don't know how many times you've seen this before, but when you say like people's true colors come out when they're under stress, or whatever, and during a difficult time, difficult situation, you might see a different side of someone that you don't typically see. So being able to think about being dedicated to living out the values even in the tough times, and trying to stay true to who you are and not behaving differently based on the time you find yourself in. So anytime that dedication comes into play in this scenario in Love Works, it comes down to sometimes you have to make tough decisions. You want people to see that you are there in support of them. You're dedicated to the mission, the vision, and you're not going anywhere. And really, that's why I feel like this ties it all up, because the honesty, the truthfulness, that's a part of it. You show that you're dedicated by telling the truth, even though the truth isn't what someone wants to hear. Like, all of these things show up in dedication itself. Okay, so we have made it through all 7 of these principles. So again, they were patient, kind, trusting, unselfish, truthful, forgiving, and dedicated. So just to summarize, so love is patient. That went back to having self-control in difficult situations. Love is kind by showing encouragement, enthusiasm, really showing that you care about people. This goes back to servant leadership, right? It's trusting, so that is the placing confidence in someone. Unselfish, where you're thinking of yourself less. Truthful is when you're defining reality and being very transparent about what's going on, any challenges going on. Forgiving, that means releasing the grip of a grudge, letting things go, letting the past go, and looking forward. And finally, dedicated and sticking to your values in all circumstances that you find yourself in. So those are the 7 things that this text shares, are all a part of sharing love in the workplace. So I'm curious if any of you thought, like at the beginning of the episode, why is she talking about love on a leadership podcast? Hopefully you understand, the distinction that they're trying to make between love, the emotion, and love, the verb, the action. They actually, I remember they talked about, I think it's Greek. Don't laugh at me, but I'm pretty sure it's Greek, has different kinds of love. There's like the philos and the, I swear I didn't make this up. Ethos, philos. Help me out there. Different types of love. And one is the love that you feel like when you're a teenager and seeing someone, for the first time, and you have that crush, right? Are you Googling it? I swear I didn't make it up. Yeah. Oh, eros, not ethos. Okay. Well, philos, this says philia. It's philos, the love between friends. Can you search Greek love? I don't know, types of Greek love. I don't know. Just put the word Greek in there because I want to know what they said. Okay. All right. So there's eros, philia, agape, pragma, ludus. Don't laugh. Storge. Okay. Well, you get the point. Or storge, depending on who you ask. All right. Well, anyway, this is an area where I could grow. The point was, I swear there was a point, that they were talking about how in our language that love, we kind of just think about romantic love or the emotion of love, and that in Greek it's broken down into so many types. It's so much easier to kind of distinguish between them and understand where love really does have a place in your professional life. Whereas in the English language, it makes it appear that it doesn't. That's the point I was trying to get across. Maybe I didn't do so well with that. So, branching out challenge. You can probably guess it at this point. It's usually pretty obvious, but I would love for you to pick out one of the principles specifically to intentionally practice in your leadership in the coming week. It could be patience with a team member. It could be kindness in a difficult conversation. It could be trusting someone, delegating a task to them for the first time. Whatever it is, take action, show some love at work. And if you love, people will follow. People will follow with trust. You will have happier people. You will retain your people. I really do love this book. So be sure to check it out if you're interested. It's a great read. I actually recommended it to Jay Foreman this morning. I was trying to redeem myself because I may have made a terrible book recommendation to him, and I felt very guilty that he spent money on it. There was a reason I had him read it, even if I knew that he wouldn't like it. There was still a reason for it. It leads to good conversation. And anyway, I was trying to redeem myself this morning, so I messaged him at the butt crack of dawn to let him know that I now know what you should read. I swear I make good recommendations sometimes, so I'm pretty sure that he purchased this today. But I bet he didn't get it from my essentials page. I'll have to tell him about that. All right, so share your experiences with implementing these. I would love to hear from you and know how you are bringing love to the workplace. Thank you for sharing this time with me today. Happy Valentine's Day to you. I have to say that I do love my listeners. I love that you take time out of the day to listen in on this and take away what you can. I really do hope that something is actionable from what I'm sharing in these episodes. As always, I really I would love to hear your feedback, and I don't hear enough of it. So I really want to hear from you. You can email us at info@branchingoutpodcast.com. You can go online at branchingoutpodcast.com. Certainly do a submission. We're looking for guests. You can do an application on there at the bottom of the page too. Let's see, what other updates? Is there anything else I should be sharing? I think that's pretty much it. Nothing major going on. I have lots of good guests coming up. We've been trying to book those out for a while, some exciting ones. We did have a cancellation due to illness today, and that's why you got stuck with me. It wasn't originally supposed to be just me, and it wasn't originally supposed to be on love, so maybe it worked out the way that it was supposed to, so I could do this themed episode. Oh, I do. I should celebrate something I found out right before the episode. Should I share it? Yeah? No? Maybe so?
That's up to you.
Well, I got an email right before this episode that I was nominated for a Greater Good Award through the Top of Virginia Regional Chamber. I was nominated as Entrepreneur of the Year. And so I was dealing with some challenges in the moments right before receiving that email. So it completely turned around my mood and made me so happy. So I'm grateful for that nomination. It's a really big deal. So as soon as I'm finished recording this, I get to call my mama and papa and see if they want to come to that event, which would be pretty cool because they haven't been able to be a huge part of my business world. They were here for the ribbon cutting when I moved into the office a few years ago, but they just get to hear about it all the time and not really be a part of it. So that would be nice to have them there. So anyway, that's a celebration. Yay. Thank you to whoever nominated me. That was so very kind of you, showing some love. See, I just keep inserting love in this episode. Some people really do not like Valentine's Day. I know of a couple of particular people who do not like this holiday, but hopefully this episode gave you a reason to like it. All right, I've held you long enough. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I don't know what time you're listening to this. Maybe it's long after Valentine's Day, but I hope you are able to find a way to bring more love into your workplace, no matter where that is. Bring love into everything that you do, even if it's a home office. Bring more love into your family. Treat people the way they deserve to be treated. All right. As always, an episode will drop every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. We are still committed to that every week. We entertain the idea of, doing it with less frequency, but that that idea didn't last very long. So anyway, back to it. Until next time, keep branching out.